I want to start with this quote from Michael Lane from ShowingTime. It says, "Conditions for buyers are less competitive than they were last year at this time. While a general increase in available inventory in most markets has not only given buyers more options to consider, but more time to consider them." So that's huge. More options, more time. If you've been sitting on the sidelines or stepped out of the process, now may be a great time to jump back in with more options available and more time to consider and not feeling so rushed. This is a very different market than what we were talking about even just a few months ago. The frenzy of the pandemic is truly behind us, and finding a home may not be the biggest challenge anymore for buyers who are eager to get into home ownership, as conditions for buyers are less competitive. I want to break that down for you between buyer traffic and today's inventory. This next graph shows that showings are now below last year's level. This is ShowingTime's monthly showing index, and what this is a measure of how many people are going out and looking at homes right now. What this graph demonstrates is that the orange bars over the past few months, April, May, June, and July, we're seeing buyer's demand starting to soften a little bit. So below where we were from last year's levels. Why is that? Rising mortgage rates have really softened what's happening with buyer demand. We have a little bit of a cooling off with fewer buyers in the market right now. So not as many buyers as the past year, but let's talk about what happened compared to pre-pandemic numbers. So if we look at the same ShowingTime index for July of 2022, that's the green bar. Certainly a drop off from 2020 and 2021 compared to how many buyers were actively in the market. But we are still ahead of those pre-pandemic years. And remember, those were good years in real estate. So how does this relate to inventory? Take a look at this ShowingTime quote, which describes the year-over-year dip in buyer activity. The year-over-year dip in buyer activity follows a general market rebalancing that's taking place across the country as available inventory increases while fewer buyers actively shop for homes. So what does that mean? Well, if there are fewer buyers in the market, that's softening buyer demand. That's softening home sales, and that creates more inventory. So not as many buyers mean inventory is actually growing. This creates more options for the buyers who are staying in the market. I want to show you this data from Realtor.com. This is the latest active inventory, and it shows that it's increasing dramatically since the beginning of this year. You can see how it really ticked up May, June, July, and August. At the same time that buyer demand was softening. So fewer buyers, more inventory. This is creating a very different dynamic in our housing market. The interesting thing is that inventory overall is not just coming from new listings. You may think the more inventory means people are listing their homes. Well, let's break it down. Active versus new listings for a moment. So we actually have more active listings than new listings. That's the trend in the market right now. The green bars are new listings coming to the market, but the active listings are the blue bars, and they are increasing. What this means is that homes are staying on the market a little bit longer. Buyers have more time, and they have more options, just like we saw on that quote at the beginning of the video. Active listings are growing. Let's take a look at this map, which is a great visual to be able to see this year-over-year change in inventory. What this shows is the darker the state gets, the more inventory is available. Look at August in the bottom right-hand corner. August shows that we have 26.6% more inventory this August than we did last August. That's a big change if you think back to last year when buyers were still clamoring and endless bidding wars were still going on. Buyers have more options right now because overall the buyer demand is softening. This latest survey data from Realtor.com shows buyers have more room for negotiation. 41% of sellers accepted some sort of contingencies in the contracts. It also says that 32% of sellers dropped the price because it didn't meet the appraisal. So more contingencies coming back. Sellers negotiating a little bit more with appraisal price when that comes in. 29% of sellers paid for repairs to the home after the appraisal. That's an increase we're seeing. 32% of sellers paid for some or all of the buyer's closing costs. So things we weren't seeing in the market a year ago are starting to evolve in the buyer's favor. That does not mean we are in a buyer's market. We are still squarely in a seller's market, but buyers have a little more breathing room. So what does this look like from a seller's perspective? Inventory is still historically low. This data from Calculated Risk clearly shows the week ending September 2nd, we had 26.3 more inventory than the same week in 2021. If you compare that to 2020 inventory, it is still lower than that 5.4%. And if you compare that to the same week in 2019, inventory is still historically low, 42.2%. So we are still in a seller's market. The market is at an inflection point. Our supply and demand ratio is changing quickly. This is something we're going to keep an eye on. This is Mary Kay Wright from The Right Choice with Add Properties, Christie's International Real Estate. Thanks for watching this market update. Next, we'll be discussing home prices, so stay tuned.